All right, before we get started, our panel is about marketing excellence, and I think it would be really appropriate, all of you, if you have your book, or I could just read it to you, but we should thank at Senator Tim Scott for hosting this event. And don't forget the hashtags choosing excellence and school choice. It's really important, especially as we talk about how to market school choice and parent choice to understand how we should engage on our phones. So anyway, let's get going. My name is Cara Kerwin. I'm the president of the Center for Education Reform. Simply stated, at the center, we are in the business of creating opportunity for families. And over our 21-year history, have brought a lot of laws, have worked alongside lawmakers, and have also helped to encourage and educate parents about the choices and opportunities available to them. To start the marketing, I trust parents. That's kind of something that we really feel strongly about at the Center for Education Reform, because we're about empowering parents, parent power. And that's been our moniker for a very, very long time. But to set up this panel, we're going to be talking about implementing a marketing and public relations plan that empowers more families. And we have a fantastic panel. It's really a pleasure to have these colleagues and Senator Alexander with us today. But to kick it off, I want to introduce Helen Weaver. Helen's a native of Greenville, South Carolina, who previously worked in the office of Senator Jim DeMint, serving in numerous roles both in D.C. and in South Carolina. She's now the president and CEO of the Palmetto Policy Forum, an independent state-based action engine, which I'm going to ask her to explain that in a little bit. But anyway, they're dedicated to bringing citizens together to implement bold policy solutions that expand opportunity for every South Carolinian. Ellen has been in the pages of Investor's Business Daily, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and the Washington Times, and of course across all the opinion pages in South Carolina. She's extremely passionate about expanding educational choice and has experienced its power in her own life. You can't really introduce Senator Lamar Alexander. I mean, he's just so known for many of us as being a champion of educational freedom for so long. But if I have to read the bio, I have to read the bio. But he's the son of a kindergarten teacher and an elementary school principal. He is the only Tennessean ever popularly elected both governor and U.S. senator. He's also served as the U.S. Secretary of Education and president of the University of Tennessee. 3 times, his colleagues have elected Senator Alexander chairman of the Senate Republican Conference, the third-ranking Republican position in the United States Senate. He's currently the chairman of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. That committee is responsible for helping our schools. And Senator Alexander is married to Honey Bueller. They've been married since 1969. They have 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and he's also a Presbyterian elder, a very accomplished man. My dear friend, Dr. Ximena Hartsock, is the founder of Phone to Action, civic engagement platform. I should be wearing my glasses. God, I can't. I'm like squinting. I can't figure it out, and they're on my head. I'm just getting used to them. Sorry. Ximena is the founder of Phone to Action, a civic engagement platform that organizations use to power their supporters with tools to connect with government. I'm proud to say that at the Center for Education Reform, we're a proud partner of Phone to Action. Prior to this, Ximena was appointed by Mayor Adrian Fenty and Michelle Rhee as D.C. Public Schools Deputy Chief for Teaching and Learning, where she led academic reforms that helped to substantially improve D.C.'s historically low graduation rates. In 2010, with former Washington, D.C. Public Schools Chancellor, she co-founded Students First, an organization focused on enacting education policies for K-12 educational performance. And finally, Doug Tuthill is the president of Step Up for Students. Prior to that, he was a teacher in Florida, a former high school teacher, a GED instructor, a college professor, and the former president of 2 local Florida teachers unions. Don't start throwing things at him, that's okay, because today he runs Step Up for Students, a nonprofit Florida organization that administers educational savings accounts for over 1,400 special needs students and provides another 69,000 low-income families with scholarships to attend qualified private schools. So let's give a hand to our panel. All right, so as we start to talk about marketing excellence, I think the most appropriate, important place to start is with you, Senator Alexander. As somebody who's had the opportunity to observe the state of education, wearing so many different hats, in both the public and the private sectors. You've been an unwavering supporter of school choice, and I can't say that in the reform movement we've always been really good at marketing the importance of school choice. So what is it that we've done right that compels you to continue to champion opportunity? And where do you see the ed reform community improving to support our elected officials taking arrows, fighting for what is right? Is it data, stories from real people, or a combination of both?
Well, thanks very much for the question. This is one case where we've got the message right. Message right. I think we need some more effective messengers. And if I wanted to give you an example, I would say more people like Tim Scott, because when Tim Scott tells a story about his legislation to expand parental choice, it doesn't sound like it's somebody saying, now this would be good for you, like taking castor oil or something. It sounds like somebody who's saying, based on my life's experience, this would help people. I mean, he makes a very compelling story, for example, when he talks about a friend whose child has Down syndrome and has found the right first grade for the child. And so why not let the federal disability dollars follow that child to the parent's choice of that school, to the second grade, into the third grade, into the fourth grade. Tim tells that beautifully, and too often the choice argument is made by people who sound like they're talking academically, or they're saying, now this would be good for you. This is the right thing to do. This is ideologically correct. I don't think that's the most effective thing. I think of Polly Williams back in Milwaukee 25 years ago. I mean, she demanded it for the children that she lived with and for her own children in Milwaukee, and with Governor Tommy Thompson's help, they got something done. Now that doesn't mean all of us can't be effective in this, but that would be the first thing. Second thing, in terms of marketing it, I think it's really wise not to order people to do it, particularly from Washington, D.C. When you're adopting a new idea, it doesn't work very well if somebody makes you do it. We found that out, for example, with Common Core, didn't we? I mean, the governors were working together to try to raise standards. Washington got involved, and all of a sudden, whammo. Found it out with teacher evaluation. I mean, Tennessee was the first state to pay teachers more for teaching well, but when Washington starts telling you how to do teacher evaluation, it's too complicated to do. We don't know enough about it. You have to own it. You have to want it. You have to be a part of it. So that would be the second thing I'd say in marketing it. And then the last thing, well, there are two other quick things, and then I'll listen to the others. I would use the examples we already have in federal law of vouchers that work. I remember talking to one of my colleagues in the Senate here, reminding her that the Pell Grant is a voucher, and she said, no, it's not. And I said, yes, it is. And it's probably the most successful social program we've had in the federal government since 1944, when we gave the GI Bill for veterans gave scholarships to veterans and told them they could go to Notre Dame or Yeshiva or even to high schools, wherever they wanted to go. And now we give child care, we give vouchers for child care. So you've got choice for community college and you've got choice for preschool. So why is it so hard? And it's worked both places, so why is it hard to do it for do it for schools. And finally, while the ideal would be to say any school, public or private, we've made a lot of progress in the last 25 years by expanding choices for parents in public schools. And the more that happens, the more likely we are to get to the point where we can understand that we're talking about any school, public or private. We now have 5,000 charter schools, and we didn't have any when I was education secretary. In fact, I wrote a letter to all the school superintendents in 1992 asking them to try this new idea, you know, which was in Minnesota then, and there were only about 10 such charter schools. Every state now has expanded opportunity for parents to choose among schools, and I've always wondered why Nashville didn't just ask parents, give me the 3 choices of schools that you'd like for your child to go to, public schools I'm talking about, and say, we'll do our best to make that happen. So the more people get accustomed to the idea of choice among public schools, the more likely they are to do it with any school. But I think the short answer to the question of marketing for excellence is more people like Tim Scott.
Amen to that. Okay. Doug, with over 69,000 students participating in the tax credit program in Florida, clearly you've done something right to engage families about their educational options. And while the merits of the program are compelling enough to sell itself, clearly there's something more that you had to do. So what has been the most successful way to engage families, and are there lessons to share about what didn't work?
Well, I had several points I wrote down, and Senator Alexander systematically went through every one of them. So, I also want to thank Senator Scott. I've been meeting with Washington politicians since 1979, and you're an amazing breath of fresh air. You're going to have a huge impact on this country, so congratulations. Thank you. And Senator, you should know in Florida, 42% of all the children are attending the school other than their own neighborhood school. That's about 1.5 million kids, and it's increasing dramatically every year. So you're absolutely correct. What's happening is that there's a huge culture shift going on, and choice is becoming normative across the state. And as that picks up steam within the school districts, it also makes it more acceptable for charter schools and tax credit programs like ours, vouchers, et cetera. So you are seeing this huge cultural shift. And I think it's really the nature of public education shifting from, you know, the 19th century factory model, which we adopted when we started to go to universal public education, and now it's about customization. I think the technology is driving the cultural change. You know, all of us that have, you know, teenagers or kids in college see how they interact with the world so radically differently than some of us before the technology. They customize everything, their cell phones, their websites, you know, Facebook, how they watch television, everything is customized. And that's translating now into how they think about education, how families are thinking about education. So I think you're right on that as it expands into district schools, it's also expanding across the continuum. I also think the face is really important. We have an award with the teachers union in Florida. They think it's exploitive when we have children talking about the scholarships and we have parents talking about the scholarships. But those are the people who use the scholarships. They don't want the families, they don't want these kind of kids to be the face of choice. But they are the face of choice. They're the people who are using choice. And so that's the fight. Is school choice really a plot by Wall Street hedge fund people to somehow make profit off children? Or in fact, is it a way to empower families? Is it a way about equal opportunity? So the face is really important. The families that use the scholarships, the children that use the scholarships, we got to constantly get those people telling their stories, because that's really what the story is about. And our opponents want to change the subject. They want to make it about something other than the children, other than the families, and that really is critical. The message of equal opportunity. I'm a Democrat and a former teacher union leader, and it sort of blows people's mind, as Cara said, that I'm leading the largest private school choice organization in the country. But there's a long history going back to Daniel Patrick Moynihan in the Democratic Party of supporting, empowering families, of supporting equal opportunity. And it's heartbreaking to me as a Democrat that my political party has given up the fight for equal opportunity in this context. Senator's right. I mean, you know, Section 8 housing vouchers are okay. I was debating the teacher union president the other day in Dade County, who was telling me how terrible it was that kids in K-12 in our program could take scholarships to faith-based schools. I said, what about Notre Dame? Well, Notre Dame's okay, you know. Well, why is Notre Dame okay, but K-12 is not okay? And his head just sort of spun. He couldn't answer it. And so the ideas are on our side also. We have a long history in this country of religious freedom, of empowering people, of equal opportunity, and this is all just part of that. And it's got mixed up in K-12 because of politics, frankly, and because of power and money. But at the end of the day, our message has to be, it's about equal opportunity, it's about empowering families, it's about the transformation, by the way, of hope. One of the most amazing parts of this work for me is watching a child get a scholarship and watch how it impacts the entire family. I have example of a grandmother who's raising their grandchildren. One of the kids gets a scholarship, and the grandmother gets so excited about what's happening in her grandchild's life that she goes back and starts working on her GED. Or an older sister who is 35 years old and is working at Walmart and is doing okay, but sees her younger brother get a scholarship, and she goes back and starts working on a college degree. These are examples in my neighborhood of families that I know that have gone on our scholarship, and you see the whole family being transformed, and I think it's about hope. When people really think it's possible to transform their lives, when people who are living in poverty really see a way out, it's transformational for the entire family. And that's another part of the message that we have to get out, is that that choice and freedom really is transformational. When people really believe that it's possible, you see fantastic things happening. And we need to talk more about that too. Let the grandmother talk about how it's changing her life as well as the grandparents' life. And finally, it's just the facts. You know, we've talked earlier today in other panels. Our scholarships this year is $5,272. The average kid in Florida, taxpayers pays about $10,000 per kid. We're saving taxpayers about $5,000 per child on our program. In addition, what we're finding is that the local district schools, in which are being most impacted by kids coming onto our program, are also seeing their academic achievement increasing. That's because we're attracting some of the highest poverty, lowest performing kids into our program because the parents are desperate for a change. So we're reducing the poverty in the local district schools. We're also finding that the district schools are competing. And so when they're starting to lose kids, they improve the quality of the program. So independent researchers, not me, from Northwestern University who studied the program have found that we save money, we help district schools improve their academic achievement, and the kids that come on the program also improve their academic achievement. I mean, what's not to love, right? And so that's the kind of message. We have the facts on our side, we have the values on our side, and we have real human beings looking in the camera saying, this is transforming my life. And it's basically in a way that's consistent with our values as a country and as a culture. And we just got to keep getting that message out, and I think ultimately we're going to win.
Great, thank you, Doug. I think that makes for a good segue to our next question. Ellen, you've brought a whole new meaning to the think tank world, running an action engine in South Carolina. So how do you leverage data to market school choice to families? And then, is there data that matters more to families and to policymakers? Is it a little bit of, what have you seen being the most important in their decision-making process, both for parents and for policymakers?
Thank you very much, and I can't tell you what an honor it is to be able to be here joining Senator Scott and representing the great state of South Carolina. I am so proud to be from a state that has a national champion like him on this issue that is truly the transformational civil rights issue of our time. So it's an honor to be here today and to talk a little bit about the great things that are happening in the Palmetto State and kind of our vision for the future when it comes to school choice. When you talk about data, the great thing about where we are in the discussion now is that this is no longer a speculation. We know how choice works. I have to say thank you to Doug for all the great work that he's doing in Florida, because I think people in South Carolina are tired of hearing me talk about how great Florida works. But I said, guys, this is not a question of a matter of speculation or ideology. We know that where there are more robust choices, public education itself gets better. So stop telling me this is about destroying public education and being a shill for private schools. This is about giving every child in our state the opportunity to do better, and Florida is a wonderful benchmark and example to the rest of us. So that's one way that we use data, is by looking at what is happening in other states, reporting on those success stories, and even reporting on the success stories that we have in our own state. We now have 66 charter schools, up from 59 last year. Our charter school laws have moved us into the top 10 in the nation in terms of quality because of some great legislation that was passed with Senator Larry Groom's help last year. Thank you, Senator, for what you do for our state. And so in terms of data, we see choices expanding, more students in choice options, be it magnet school, private school, charter school, virtual school, homeschool. And so our job as an action engine, Cara, is to pull all of these people together to say, you know, we all have our individual preferences of how we think education should be done, but at the end of the day, the principle that unites us is that we believe parents fundamentally are the ones that have the best interest of their child at heart and are going to make the best decision. And that's why the next leg of our journey in South Carolina is really going to be building a parent power network, because it's parents who really have the passion and the energy and the interest in advocating for what is right for their child. So one of the things that we have done to really rally parents, to your question about data and stories, is to actually tell stories of families in South Carolina who are accessing all of the choices. What we've done is put together an education options catalog called Empower Opportunity. And in this catalog, which Senator Scott is very familiar with, he was kind enough to write the foreword to it, we tell the story of families that are accessing each of the options currently available in South Carolina. And then we just give a couple of real quick bullets about how a parent can learn more about this option and if it might be right for their child. Because honestly, you can have all the options in the world, and if parents don't have information on how to access those options, it's not going to really matter at all. So our goal is to get this into the hands of parents, both in the hard copy as well as building an online community. Everything has moved online, and so we're honored to have this on a little microsite called mysceducation.org, as well as to have done a publication of it now in Spanish, which is the first time that we've been able to do something like that. So our goal is to get this into the hands of every South Carolina parent. Now the hook at the end of the book is, okay, so we have all these great growing options in South Carolina. Wonderful. But hey, guess what? There are other states who are doing even more than we are, and here are the successes that they're seeing. Why can't we do this in South Carolina? And that's a message that I think legislators more and more are responding to. I can't thank Senator Alexander, Doug, so many of these people who have been in the trenches on this issue for years. I feel like the time is right. There is an energy that is growing all across the states. I can feel it in South Carolina, and that's why I'm so honored to be engaged in this work and to be here today with this distinguished panel. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellen. Well, speaking of that void that Ellen was so kind to remind us of, there's really no doubt, Ximena, that for decades there has been this void in engaging low-income families. In fact, I think it frustrated you so much to change your whole work and career trajectory, completely. So you started to build the tools to help organizations like us do it a little bit better. So can you please briefly talk about the evolution of how you came to sort of build Phone to Action? And then, what role now do you see social media playing in marketing school choice to families? And then where do you see the next sort of opportunity to reach a critical mass of families with this message?
Sure. Thank you, Cara. First, thank you for having me. I really appreciate to be here. And so this is sort of like an interesting story, because I used to be in education for a long time. I was a school teacher, a school principal, assistant superintendent of instruction. Then I was Department of Parks and Recreation director. So I had a career in government. And then because of these things of life that kind of change your path without you predicting, I moved all the way to Sacramento on the other side of the country, because with a group of people, including Michelle Rhee, we founded an organization called Students First. And that organization was designed or was created to really put the interest of kids first, which is the goal, the common agenda of all the people in this room. But by moving to Sacramento, a couple of things happened. One, I had to travel. I was the director of, the person in charge of membership and of organizing. So I was the one traveling to the different cities, talking to parents and helping them engage in public policy and talking to their legislators, etc. So by doing these travels and doing these town halls, something that I realized it was that all the tools that we were using to engage with parents were the wrong ones. That we were sending emails to parents knowing that email rates were going down for 14% and down, knowing that parents did not have necessarily a computer at home, knowing that many of our parents didn't have actually internet, neither in their jobs, neither at home, and knowing that a lot of these tools actually were geared to a population that didn't actually, wasn't in the urgency to have the choices that these other ones had. So the first question I had, it was, I would see Michelle and many of us speaking in public events, and then at the end of the speech, it was the moment for the call to action, and the call to action was, like us in Facebook, or go back and email your legislator. And parents, number one, many times didn't know who their legislators were. Number two, many times were asked on web forms to input their 9-digit zip code. I don't know my 9-digit zip code. Do you know yours? And it was all of these obstacles for them to engage in the policy making process instead of making it easy. So I thought, how is it possible that we don't have a tool the parents can use from their cell phones? Because this is 2011, and I was a school principal when the first iPhone came out. And I remember the friends at my school with the parents buying cell phones. And I knew that I was text messaging with most of my parents. So I thought, I'm seeing everybody here in this room using cell phones. Why is it possible that we can't do a call to action right now with their phones? So I will go back and talk to vendors and ask them, and everybody will tell me, you don't need that. Poor parents don't use technology. Poor parents don't have access to technology. And that was the first thing, the first lesson that I had in Sacramento. But the second one is that because I was so close to the heart of technology, I was so close to San Francisco, I started also seeing that all of that belief was not true. That actually was a tremendous technology already disrupting other industries. That was happening through cell phones, and it was actually marketing low-income parents. And I started looking at the statistics and predicting a little bit of what's happening today. At the time, the digital divide at home was 30%. Today, that digital divide is still pretty wide at home, but the digital divide on cell phones is not existent. Today, families of every group, every income, have the same ownership of cell phones no matter what. So over 90% of Americans right now own a cell phone. Last year, 53% own a smartphone. Today, 73% use a smartphone. Guess who are the fastest adopters of technology, of smartphones today? Minorities. And Hispanics lead the way, just 1% above African Americans, but 73 to 74% actually is marked by those two groups. So looking at that, what I thought, it's got to be a way to build this. We have GPS technology, we have cell phones, we have the people. It's got to be a way to build it. And what we did, I was very lucky that I had access to this tremendous pool of talent, and I was able to convince a couple of people. One of them is here, is Patrick Stoddard, who was one of those geniuses that it was picked by Peter Thiel to actually drop out of school and go to technology, and I convinced him, and we founded a company. So that's like